Today, we start with a young Robert Mugabe. Long before he became a controversial figure, he's speaking out on multiracialism, an idea he believed was just another way to keep people apart, not bring them together. Is he right? Can true equality exist if we're still divided by race, even when it's disguised as unity? Stick around for his take on equality.
Robert Mugabe of the Zimbabwe African People's Union.
Well, we are totally opposed to the concept of multiracialism because it assumes in the first instance that the people have got to be arranged in compartments based on color. You have Europeans in one compartment, Asians and coloreds in two other compartments, and the Africans in another compartment. And immediately you talk of multiracialism, you are accepting as a starting point that the races are different, and this difference must be recognized. We are non-racialist in our approach. That is, we regard as an individual as an individual, and that everybody must be accorded his full political rights, whether he be white or black, educated or uneducated, rich or poor. And this is exactly why we are at the moment struggling to earn for our people one man, one vote.
Partnership and multiracialism were first mentioned in 1953. Desegregation of Salisbury's first bar took place 3 months ago. It's not quite apartheid, but the races are separated by legislation. This is Harare African Township, and if you are an African, you live in a township, unless you're a houseboy and have your own private hut at the bottom of somebody's garden. The government says the basis of true partnership is education. So far, not a single school in southern Rhodesia in the entire federation has been integrated.
Multiracialism, he argued, was just a softer way of keeping racial divides alive. It meant setting people up in different compartments, each race in their own separate bubble. To Mugabe, this was the same old segregation dressed up in new clothes. Instead, he called for a world where every individual was seen as just that, an individual. No boxes, no labels. In Mugabe's view, freedom wasn't real unless everyone had equal rights, regardless of race, education, or wealth. Multiracialism might have looked like unity on the surface, but if it was built on dividing people by race, was there any progress? Mugabe thought not, and he wasn't afraid to say it out loud. In a 1976 interview, Mugabe talked about ending white minority rule in Rhodesia. He expressed doubts over Britain's willingness to fully transfer power and warned that the war would continue until they achieved their objectives.
Do you believe that the talks here are going to succeed in the end to bring a peace to Rhodesia?
Well, so far, the British have proved that they are not prepared to transfer power to us. They would like power shared as between us and the European community in the country. From our own point of view, there should not be a racial approach. There should be a non-racial approach to the problem. And what is required is for Britain to accept not just that the principle of the transfer of power is non-negotiable, but also that in accordance with the acceptance of this principle, power should actually be transferred. If Britain accepts these two postures, then obviously there won't be any difficulty.
Do you think Britain is going to accept these two postures?
Well, this is what we don't know. But going by what has now emerged, apparently Britain is not prepared to have power transferred. They're prepared to have it shared with the European community.
What will happen if Britain, as you suspect, does not accept the demands that you are making?
The war continues.
How much longer do you think it will take for you to gain your ends?
That's of course a question we cannot answer. But going by the progress which the war has made so far, I think it won't take long before we are right in Salisbury.
Thank you.
On hearing the question about escalation, you can imagine in his mind rolling his eyes, thinking, "Of course there's escalation. It's a war for freedom, not a social gathering. This isn't just another protest. We're in this for full liberation." And he added with conviction that the people of Zimbabwe supported this armed struggle, so there was no going back.
Guerrilla activity is escalating at a very rapid rate right now in Rhodesia, and you claim to represent the fighters of the country. Are you responsible for giving instructions that the fighting should escalate?
We are responsible for guiding the war, for supervising it. We started our liberation struggle in earnest in 1966. It has continued ever since. And there is absolutely nothing new. If there is escalation, this escalation is something that is to be expected in any liberation struggle.
But do you, in Geneva, have contact with the fighters in the field?
Yes, of course. We are the head of the army. ZANU is running the war. We started it. We have nurtured it. And therefore it is our war.
So do you, from this hotel, give instructions about where the fighting should be? And
well, there are commanders in the field, and these commanders know how the job should be done. But it's in accordance with the policy of the party that there should be a war, that there should be an armed struggle. And in fact, we derive support from the masses of the people who are in agreement with the armed struggle and who are actually participating in it.
It's as if Mugabe was saying, "You don't get to be halfway free." And you can almost picture him giving the British a look that said, "Nice try, but we're not playing that game." He made it clear, if Britain didn't step up, they were ready to keep fighting. Mugabe wasn't about to settle for anything less than genuine independence. Since Zimbabwe's independence, some white citizens were packing their bags and heading for the hills. Prime Minister Mugabe wasn't exactly shedding a tear over the exodus. In his view, a lot of these folks just couldn't handle the new normal. A government led by black Africans. Let's face it, after years of having their way under colonial rule, the shift to equality might have felt a bit unsettling. Of course, Mugabe makes it clear he's not thrilled about everyone leaving. He even sympathizes with those genuinely anxious about the future. But to those who just can't handle an African-run government, he shrugs and says, "Good riddance."
But the figure I read today was that since you took office, some 5,000 whites have left the country. Is that basically a right? Is that a right figure?
Well, that's the statistical figure which they give us. That some 5,000 or thereabout have left the country since our independence.
Why have those people left, sir?
I cannot say, but I think some of them just cannot accept the reality of an African government. They are racist in character, and naturally to them or to their type we say good riddance. Others are perhaps frightened, and we are sorry about those ones. We are sorry for them, really, because they needn't be frightened about us. Our policy is one of trying to accommodate everybody and to ensure that all people are treated equally on a non-racial basis. That is the category of people we are sorry about. Others are probably young men in their 30s or 40s who are not quite sure whether they have a guaranteed future in the country. Again, they have certain concerns and fears and would want to establish themselves as quickly or as early in their life as possible.
Are you trying to give these people a guarantee about their future if they stay?
Oh, we have tried to give them all the assurances possible, namely that we are not going to discriminate against any person on grounds of color or race, and that whites have a place and a role to play in our society.
Mugabe, often labeled a firebrand, chose a moderate approach to keep income tax rates steady for the country's wealthy white community. Yep, you heard that right. Despite all the social and political changes, he didn't jump at the chance to slap on higher taxes for wealthy whites.
In your budget, you have decided not to increase, as I understand it, the tax rate in the upper income brackets. And this was interpreted here again by outside journalists as a gesture on your part to these very whites that, look, you're not out to get them, you're not out to get them. Is that what you meant by that?
Well, certainly yes. We do not want to make them feel that they are being discriminated against merely because they belong to the upper income group. And if we're to levy onerous taxes on them, it might force them out of the country, or at least to reduce their earning capacity, or the income that remains after the deductions. And they might feel that this is unfair, it is discrimination, it is aimed at the whites, and that government is therefore not well disposed towards the whites.
Mugabe's decision wasn't just about keeping them comfortable. It was a strategy to stabilize Zimbabwe's fragile economy, which couldn't afford a massive flight of skills, businesses, and investment. Mugabe seemed to be saying, "We're not here to make life harder for you. We're here to build a fairer nation together." Those skills and capital were needed in Zimbabwe, not sitting in some offshore account. In 1976, Mugabe had a clear vision for Rhodesia's future, and that vision was socialism. But not just any socialism, of course. When asked if he wanted a British version of it, Mugabe quickly brushed it off, calling British socialism a thin veil for sheer capitalism.
Would you like to see a Marxist state in Rhodesia when it goes independent, Zimbabwe?
I want a socialist state, yes, which is based on principles that are drawn from all socialist systems that are available, that have had experience, and so on.
When you say socialist, I mean, do you mean British socialism or do you mean Russian socialism?
I don't think there is any socialism in Britain. There is sheer capitalism.
Where do you think there is socialism at the moment?
There's socialism in the East. There's socialism also in Africa, in some parts of Africa. There's socialism in Mozambique. There's socialism in Tanzania. And these are examples. We will look at all these examples that are available and try to adjust ourselves in accordance with our own situation.
He wasn't looking to copy-paste anyone else's system. Instead, Mugabe wanted a kind of African socialism, built on principles from models like those in Mozambique and Tanzania. Countries experimenting with new ideas, but grounded in familiar soil. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more insights into the leaders and moments that shaped history.